I'm Tim Baughman, and this is The Skinny.
From the Fatheads Eyewear Studios in Speedway, Indiana, this is The Skinny, brought to you by Toyota, Rhino Classifieds, General Tire, and Dream Giveaway. This segment of The Skinny is brought to you by Toyota. Welcome to another exciting episode here of The Skinny. Ken Stout and the track dude sitting right alongside Mr. Michael Young. It is bright and early here in Speedway, Indiana. Those guys love it when they can drag my fat butt in here and get me going first thing in the morning. But it is a beautiful, crisp morning outside in the 30s, I think 37 degrees or so. For a chubby guy, I actually really love that weather, Michael.
I will say that the show may be a little rough today because he can't already remember basic things. So
it happens.
Yeah, if
it's a little
slow,
it's a little foggy in there.
A little foggy.
So the way it goes. Sitting alongside and will join us here this morning is one of the silent heroes. You never hear too much about him until all of a sudden you need him. His name is Tim Baughman. He is the senior Director of Track Safety and Medical for IndyCar, AMR, if you will, and has also been a firefighter for some 40 years. Am I correct in that? 30, 40 years?
I retired 2.5 years ago from the Indianapolis Fire Department after 32 years of service.
So a long, long time. One of those first responders, and speaking of that, was actually at 9/11 on the next day. Keep in mind he was here in Indianapolis when it happened, but on day two was part of the efforts there to help a lot of people, and we appreciate your service. We appreciate what you and all of your colleagues do. It's a rare breed for sure. Yep.
Thank you.
So how did this all start? How did you get involved with IndyCar? Obviously a firefighter forever, and have seen and done and probably one of the most unsung jobs that a person can do, and then to find yourself as a firefighter in Indianapolis, to working at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and then now the director of safety.
Well, I grew up in Indianapolis, East Side, Howe High School kid. Scott Rimke and I grew up.
Wow.
It goes back to Howe days. But I went to a Methodist Hospital paramedic program in 1981, and was pursuing my paramedicine, skill set. And part of that program was to come out to the Speedway and work somewhat like an internship. And we first aid stations, take care of the infield, the old infield, at IMS. And from there, the passion of racing and everything just continued. And they ended up hiring me to work in the garage area as a paramedic and then in the pits. And as it rolled through for years, then I continued on and got hired by the fire department in 1987. And in parallel, I did both things. I did racing and the fire department paramedic work. And my first race was 1982 at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, working that event. And then just one thing rolled into another as my career advanced, and I got tagged out to work the Hoosier 100 in 1980 or 1991, and there was a horrific accident there. And I tell everybody it's virtually used every trauma skill set that we knew at the time. Dr. Bach heard about it, who was the medical director for IndyCar at that time and IMS, and he basically said, would you want to be a paramedic on our safety team? So in 1992, I worked actually on the track my first year on the safety team. And that's how, it just flowed from there the whole time. Obviously we started traveling in 96. IMS was incredible at that time because we had the Brickyard, we had the 500, we had Formula One. It was getting all these different flavors of racing, in one, venue. But then we started traveling in '96, and now we're taking it on the road, and juggling family, juggling racing, juggling my career. I was just very fortunate to have all those opportunities.
As the traveling began, was that the first time that a medical team actually traveled with a series or a circuit for the entire season?
No, actually, the kart safety team back when, if you remember, Lon Bromley and Davey and that group were traveling with CART. That was with Trammell, and Alvey was with that group. It was when there was somewhat of a split going on. So those folks actually started in the early 80s, and about the same time. It was just in a parallel, different time frame, because we were working just Indy at that time until we started traveling in 96.
Yeah, such a developed skill set. And the fans at home might not. It's not something I guess you would cross your mind unless you were actually racing one of the cars, or if you had a child or something racing an open wheel car, something where they slide their legs down into, and the seat is actually part of the car, and your body becomes part of that seat. I mean, you're basically entombed inside of that car to strap yourself in to deal with the G-forces and maintain control of the car and keep them as safe as possible. But the fans at home, until maybe you see something bad happen, you don't think of, oh my goodness, how are they going to get that person out of that car? So it's such a developed skill set that you guys have had to learn and maintain and get better at all along the way, that I'm sure that for mothers and fathers and the racers across the land, we're really happy to hear that you're going to travel with a series, because you need those experienced people to get that driver out.
Yeah, it's truly a different skill set, as you mentioned, but what we look for, people who have mastered the firefighting, the driver extraction, the rescue work, have experience to the point where they understand that they work in very tight time windows. For us to be successful, we have to be at our best every time it happens. And so when we look for people to do this, and they come to me, we look for people. It's an ongoing process. We look for those folks who have mastered that skill set of being a firefighter, being a paramedic, and understand that things happen in such a compressed time period in racing that they have to be successful. And quite frankly, people ask us why we do that, and it's probably the challenge to operate at this level, the best you can be as a firefighter, as a paramedic, as a rescue technician, and do it in such a way that it can make a difference when a lot of times folks wouldn't survive these incidents.
Absolutely. I mean, you go, look, quite frankly, from sitting in a truck drinking a cup of coffee to wide open trying to save somebody's life in a split second.
Yes. Yeah, it's different. Obviously, my career in the fire service, we can't put a firehouse on every corner of every block. So nationally, the standard is 4 to 7 minutes response time, to get, a fire truck to somebody's house or an ambulance to somebody's house in an emergency. In IndyCar racing with our IndyCar safety team, it's not minutes, it's seconds. So we literally are sitting trackside, which that doesn't happen. We don't have fire trucks and ambulances sitting on the interstate or sitting in an intersection waiting for a crash. We're sitting trackside, and we actually get to see the incident happen, which is a huge part of our success, because we see the mechanism of injury and understand what potentially could happen and what potentially has happened to that driver. And so it's very key. But we do work very hard to make sure that they have a term called the golden hour in trauma. And the golden hour is from the time the injury happens to the time they're in surgery. We don't save people. We don't save people in, trauma patients out on the street. We get them to surgery, and it's part of a system. And with that system, we try to narrow our window so that we give the surgeons and the hospitals and the tertiary care an opportunity to save that life.
Very, very important stuff. It's great stuff, man. Again, we can't thank you enough, and we have a lot more to cover here with you.
Sure.
Pick that brain of yours. I know you've seen a lot. You've been in a lot of different situations. So we're going to take a quick break here, and we'll be right back on the other side with more very You said a little foggy, right, Michael?
A lot foggy. A lot foggy. A lot foggy.
We'll be back in a minute. This segment of The Skinny is brought to you by Dream Giveaway. Dream Giveaway has been giving away high-end American muscle cars to raise money for charity since 2007. Dream Giveaway is known for giving away classic and new muscle and paying the federal taxes so the winners don't have to. For $25, you can jump in the game, and part of that goes to charity. You'll have a chance at winning some of the coolest cars on the planet. Check it out at dreamgiveaway.com. Welcome back to The Skinny. Ken Stout here, trying to wake up apparently, stumbling with all the words. Michael's going to carry the show from here on out. I'm just going to go finish my coffee. See you later.
Here we go, folks. Tim Baughman is our guest, and Tim has seen and done so much with the NTT IndyCar Series. And we touched upon in the first segment the reaction time once an incident happens. When you see a yellow, I've always wondered, we have 3 track safety trucks that man several people in each. When the time of caution comes out, how quickly do you assess what's going on as you approach an incident, and what are the steps that you take each and every time? And we must remember things have changed now with the aero screen, so I'm sure that process has changed ever so slightly. But when you're inside, are you always ready? Like at any second something could happen, or is it casual, but as soon as a caution comes out, maybe like at a firehouse, you hear the alarm go off and everybody jumps into action?
Well, first of all, we have 16 team members go to every race, cover those 3 trucks that you mentioned. And there is different protocols based on road courses, street courses, and ovals. So the response is different. On ovals, which where we started cutting our teeth in '96, it's very clear cut what that response is. A triple yellow goes out. We're there. We may not see it. You remember that an Indy car going on a super speedway is traveling about a football field a second, and a crash zone for an Indy car is about 1,000 feet at 220 mile an hour. So sometimes that crash happens before they ever get to us, and then they end up right in front of us, or they slide by us, or it happens right in front of us, and we got to follow them 1,000 feet to where they come to rest. Our first truck goes to the car that was involved. The second truck goes to the point of impact. The third truck then fills the void in between, and we basically work from the 2 endpoints and take care of the incident. But that first truck is key, obviously, with that driver. As we roll out, we see the incident go down. Things that we look at as we visualize what's going on. Is the driver's head up? Are they awake? Are they trying to do something purposeful? Because that's part of that assessment of whether, and that's changed that with the aero screen, because we really can't see the driver's head like we used to be able to, which is a great thing, by the way. So what we see is the driver awake or appear to be moving? Is the car on fire? Is the car upright? Because all those things change our response. And if we have multiple cars, we're pulling out and I'm driving safety 2. I'm looking to say, okay, he's moving, they're fine. I keep driving until I find something that's worthy of me making that initial stop. If there are multiple cars, those trucks will then break protocol and we'll start splitting up, and they'll go to the other driver. So we always try to get a paramedic or one of our team members with every driver. They're great drivers, wonderful drivers. Sometimes they're bad pedestrians. So we want to make sure we're with them even when they get out of the car, so they don't walk out in front of traffic, walk out in front of another response vehicle or something out on the racetrack. So we always try to get somebody there immediately to do that initial assessment. Sometimes it's immediate. Our trucks are following the crash. People are they're right on top of it. The car's sliding to us, basically. It's like a catcher with a catcher's mitt saying, put it here, we're here, right here. Other times there's a gap or a void, and you've asked me about that offline before. And people say, where's the safety team? Well, they're so used to seeing us there that quick. There are times when there's a bigger gap between where our trucks are and where the incident happened. So there is a strategy of where our trucks are parked. We try to put them using historical information, using the experts out there, the Tony Kottmans and those folks to say, hey, this is a high-speed corner. We built the track like this. This is probably a place where we want to have a safety truck in this runoff. If we have a big hit here, the opportunity to save a life there. Sometimes odd things happen on racetracks where there's big hits where they weren't expected. We look at the Romain Grosjean crash in Formula One. That was a straightaway. Two cars got together and 90 degrees into the wall. It was a gap between response positions. Those things do happen.
I was thinking about the incident that happened in race 1 in Detroit this year where Felix Rosenquist's car, and they had a failure with the throttle, and he went full throttle into a corner where we don't normally expect crashes. With the aero screen now in place, and that certainly did its job, how did you assess that when he's buried a car length into the tire barrier?
So, good example of a place where it's a technical part of the race course, normally not high impacts, but yet something happened. A mechanical failure caused that big impact. So he goes in at a lot higher speed. It wasn't a position where we had a safety truck right on top of it because it was in that technical area versus a high-speed impact point or projected high-speed input. So we were there. Everything worked. The track design with the tires, the way, even with the concrete walls that actually and fence that were actually destroyed, they did their job. But more importantly, his car submarined up into those tires, hit the fence. Tires went over the top of his head, were on top of it. The car actually ended up resting, about a 45-degree noseward up. And yeah, it was definitely a challenge. And it was the first driver that we extracted in a real incident with the aero screen, and we thought that it went extremely well with the fact that we had trained probably hundreds and hundreds of drills, knowing that the aero screen was going to make a challenge. It's kind of like working in a hole. You have to reach down; everything's below ground, and so we had to design equipment differently. The backboard we put on the driver has lift straps so that we can use our body mechanics better. It secures the driver more like a bucket so that when you do lift them up, you're not going to cause further injury. And the fact that we used to have 4 or 5 sets of hands down in the cockpit, somebody taking the steering wheel, somebody doing the straps, taking the head surround off. You can only get about 2 sets of hands in that position now. So all of our protocols as far as driver extraction changed. With that incident, fortunately, Felix was not injured seriously. We found out that all of our practice and all of our preparation, it was successful in the fact that we know that we can do that with the aero screen in play. And there was a lot of work that went into that. And I have to thank Jay Fry initially when they came up with doing the aero screen and Red Bull. He tagged me out and said, "We need you to sit in on these meetings." From the design point, they asked me, what do we need? I brought them a backboard, what we normally use. We measured the cockpit, 21.5 inches. We made sure that opening stayed 21.5 inches because that's what we need to get a driver straight up and out without turning their head or their neck or their back and potentially injuring them further. So all that went into play. They designed the thing, and as soon as we had prototypes, we were taking it out to Homaltro and Glen Burnie, and we were cutting it. We were finding out how strong it was, finding out how it was affixed to the car, how the plexiglass or the polyglass was affixed to the car, and what we needed to do to remove it if we had to. So there was a lot of drill, a lot of preparation that went into play, and those all went on top of our normal protocols. So we feel it worked out real well, and Dallara and IndyCar and Ganassi was involved in this too. They got us a 2012 tub that was damaged beyond repair. They actually put an actual aero screen on it, frame, poly, the whole 9 yards, and we drill. It goes with us to every race. And it's not something that we did one time and just pushed it off to the side. We literally do it almost every race weekend. And we do it in January when we do our team training. We'll do it 30, 40 times.
We'll take a quick break here. We have Tim Baughman in the studio here, the Senior Director of Track Safety and Medical, giving us some great insight on the preparation that he and his team goes through to make sure our drivers out there in IndyCar are safe. We have plenty more to come. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
This segment of The Skinny has been brought to you by General Tire. It's more than just a slogan. Anywhere is possible with General Tire. General Tire's Grabber X3 Mud Terrain tire offers aggressive styling and is engineered for durability with innovative performance features that are ready to carry you through extreme mud, dirt, and rock-covered terrain. For extreme traction that's ready for anything and rugged styling to match, look no further than the Grabber X3. Make your anywhere possible by visiting GeneralTire.com today.
This segment of The Skinny is brought to you by Rhino Classifieds. Tired of all those ads and random stuff that shows up when you're looking to buy or sell your car parts? Rhino Classifieds was created just for you. Welcome to a streamlined buying and selling app created by racers for racers and race fans. Modified cars, classic cars, race cars, that special big block you need, the trailer to move your baby around the country in. We got you at rhino.co. Welcome back to The Skinny. We have a great guest on here. This is Tim Baughman, Senior Director of Track Safety and Medical, giving us some insights on what the AMR team goes through whenever an incident happens on the track, how they prepare, and then how they deal with that incident. Some great insights, some great stories here to help everybody understand everything that you guys go through. We're going to pick out a couple of incidences here. I'm going to pick the James Hinchcliffe one for a couple of reasons. One, he was on the show and we had an opportunity to talk to him about that, but his unique situation of actually being impaled, so he was pinned inside of the car, and of course that was before aero screen, which would have made it, who knows, how much more difficult. But when you look at a situation like that, you constantly think, I'm thinking, well, can they cut the car apart? But you really can't cut the car apart. I mean, there's a person inside of it, and of course those tubs are so incredibly strong. What was the scenario there with James?
So James, as we know the story, obviously the suspension part, which kind of acted like a spear when the car went in at the correct angle into the safer barrier, actually penetrated all the way through the side tub and then went into his body, and then actually came out and went into the tub again. So he was skewered basically on that part. James was initially awake, talking. Noticed that his color was not so good, but sometimes color's not good just because they just had a 110G impact or 70G impact and the body's catching up. As I went to take him out of the car, he wouldn't come out. It was, boy, what's going on here?
Oh, so you guys didn't know initially?
No. So nothing was working that normally worked. We take the foot box off to the shock cover to look at the feet, make sure there's nothing in there. The pedals, the feet aren't stuck in the pedals. Took the head surround off. They were talking to James, assessing him, and then as they went to take him out of the car, he just wouldn't come out. Well, then now we got to find out. Actually, put hands down around his hips, his legs. Find out what's going on here, because the way that the piece went in and then was flush with the tub, so you couldn't see it from the outside.
Oh my goodness!
So they went down and came up, and obviously found that he was bleeding, and then they realized, we've got something else going on differently here. So a very small piece of this suspension, and it really turned into a spear. The heim on the end broke off. It actually become a point, and that's what penetrated all the way through. Well, it stuck in the other side of the car. Well, taking the spreader from the Hamaltro spreader, which spreads out to 32.5 inches, they spread that just enough to release that and heard a pop and release that point that was stuck in the other side of the car. All of our training, and training still today, is that when you have somebody impaled or on an object, you don't remove it, simply because it's there and it may be up against a blood vessel and stopping it from bleeding more. and you could do more damage by removing it. So in our training, trauma training today, you still you take the object with them to the hospital. Well, we couldn't load up a whole Indy car. So we had to break our training, and they basically, when they heard that pop and felt a release, they said, we've got to pull him off of here. He's going to, bleed out in this car. So that pop occurred. Guys were ready. They put him in, got him out of there, basically slid him off the suspension piece or the impalement. And literally from this is James' account of it, because he did it. It was incredible that how much he wanted to talk to every person that took care of him, and he wanted to know what happened, because obviously at a certain point he didn't know what was being done, but there's decisions that were made to take him directly to the trauma center at Methodist. There, instead of stopping at the Infield Care Center. There were decisions on, we got to slide him off of this, because if we had messed around trying to cut it, trying to pull it loose, trying to get it loose in somewhere, we're talking seconds here. And James will tell you this, is that he was in a resuscitation mode from the time when the elevators opened in the operating room to the point where he had lost all of his blood. And if they had gone 15, 20 seconds, another minute, if we had taken 2 more minutes, we have a different outcome. And so James, he did, Mike Yates was head of the team at that time. Mike was there, and Matt Stewart, who's currently on the team, took care of him. They did some very incredible things in the back of that ambulance that, quite frankly, people talk about today and say, how did you think of this? And it was all trying to stop the bleeding. You hear the stop the bleed, and tourniquets are coming back into form of trying to save people's lives. Police officers are carrying tourniquets. We use those basic things, but a big tourniquet, and stopping the bleed by holding pressure to give him a few more seconds to get him to that operating room where he could be resuscitated and survived. We
remembered the 20th anniversary, obviously, of 9/11. We lost Dan Weldon 10 years ago, so that anniversary came up as well. And I think about that day and what had happened and how horrific and how quickly everything went wrong. Describe, if you would, your time with being in New York City the day after 9/11, and then being on the scene with Dan's incident.
Well, actually, at Dan's incident, I was actually fire control, so I was overseeing the response, and so I had trucks out there. And when I look at the parallel between the two things, it was something that your mind just doesn't grasp all the details and stay with you. In few weeks ago when they did the 10-year on Dan, we were looking, and I was like, gosh, I remember that now. And same way of 9/11, there were certain aspects until they started showing it that our brains, and then maybe this is a thing that God blessed us with, in the fact that our brains don't remember those things on purpose, and it helps us cope and move forward. But the Dan Weldon crash, there were 7 cars burning. There was a driver significantly injured, 17 cars involved. And it literally looked like a large commercial jetliner crash on a racetrack. That's debris everywhere, fires, people up and walking, other people seriously injured. So, but it happened right in front of us, and then in New York, if you look at it, you're sitting there thinking, what? We had these 210-story towers down, and there's nothing left. And I remember getting off the bus 15 hours after the towers came down and walked into a dust pile, and you couldn't see anything. And there was, fire. There's still smoke coming out of the pile, and it was all very surreal. It's like, and there was a comparison, when you look at those things and how we deal with them. And I will tell you that all first responders, probably sometime in their career, have dealt with, something very traumatic. But quite frankly, that's what we've trained for. That's what we were built for. That's why we were designed to go out and do those types of things. After 35, 40 years of doing it, you don't realize when you're that 20-year-old kid saying, hey, sign me up, put me in, coach, I'm ready to go, and I'm ready to go, that the impact that it has and how we deal with those types of things. But for the most part, I couldn't be any more proud of how our team responds, how proud I am to be a member of that team. And the whole response to 9/11, the whole response to what we do we look at those as opportunities for us to excel as professionals. And if we excel, then people live, we have a better outcome.
Incredible efforts, incredible stories, and incredible situations. It's just fascinating to listen to what you guys do, how you prepare. I can't thank you enough, man, for all the effort and an endless task. It's also very good to hear. It was actually going to be one of my questions, but you answered it inadvertently whenever you started talking about the design of the aero screen, the fact that they do include you guys in some of that design and get your input about what it's going to change from your end in terms of safety. Certainly the whole premise is to keep the driver safer, but after an incident, what's it going to do to make it more difficult to extract them? I even wonder if there's further development that could be taken in terms of maybe some way a quick removal of that aero screen to help you guys if in fact, given a James Hinchcliffe situation where in a matter of seconds you could pop that off and get yourself some more working room, but certainly that affects the whole rest of the car.
Well, first and foremost, as a first responder out on the street, we get very little information about cars that are built in factories, by the big motor companies. We kind of learn to deal with, this is what you see, this is what how do we work through it systematically, knowing the materials, knowing the design, and just applying that. But yeah, I'm sure there's some people that are a lot smarter in the engineering side of things that are looking at ways of improving the aero screen, whether it's on the new tub going forward. You got to remember, it was retrofitted onto the 2012 tub, so there were a lot of restrictions that went on to make that work, and and it's pretty phenomenal how they did it. But imagine given a blank sheet of paper and design a new car, incorporate those types of things. It's pretty exciting, and that's probably, if you want to frame that. In the 35, 40 years I've been doing this, we had concrete walls. We went to safer barriers. We've had so many safety. We've had the Hans device. We've so many safety measures that have evolved, and that's the cool part about racing, is that it's always evolving. It's always pushing. Even though there's this competition everybody sees on TV and says, well, they're racing. Man, the engineer folks working behind the scenes, the decision makers to make things safer, and I have to mention, our primary sponsor you mentioned is AMR, and AMR has been a great partner for us in the fact that anything we've needed, they've said, well, how can we help you? Whether it's a certain type of device or a scope that we can put down to get an airway on a driver that we have problems accessing, a monitor to monitor their oxygen levels, their CO2 levels, all those things, because that driver now is that may be in there a little longer than what they were a few years ago. Now we have these devices, through our sponsor and through their support that helps us do that. And I think it's a system, and we're a component of it. But I think track design, car design, our team, the medical care that's set up prior to having a helicopter, when we're a distance from out, it's all part of a network or a series of things that lead to our success. So there are a lot more people behind the scenes than just our 16 people and our 2 doctors and 4 nurses. And the way that we're embraced by the racing community and supported, and basically a lot of people say we would like to have a team like yours. And Some of my team members worked recently with the SRX, series that came up. We all had some background, some NASCAR stuff. One of my team members is now the director of safety for IMSA. So a lot of our cross training and things that are going on back and forth are going to make us better. I see that sprint car sitting there in front of you right now, and I think the biggest area where we can improve in racing is small tracks around the country. We've lost a lot of friends and a lot of drivers, and we've had first responders hurt. And I think if we could work to improve that safety at those levels, we're going to save more lives and hopefully have better outcomes and keep racing fun.
Once again, Tim Baughman with us, Senior Director of Track Safety and Medical. Some great insights, and I can't thank these guys enough. If you go out to a racetrack, it doesn't matter if you're a fan or if you're a racer, crew member, whatever it may be, these guys are always there. You'll bump into one sooner or later. Take a moment, just say thanks, because without them, we would have lost a lot of our friends. Tim, thank you very much for spending the time with us this morning, man. Great show.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, bud. We'll see you next time. Thanks for being with us here on The Skinny. This episode has been brought to you by Toyota, Rhino Classifieds, Dream Giveaway, and General Tire. For the latest in sunglasses, optical frames, accessories, and apparel, be sure to check out fatheads.com. That's Fatheads with a Z. Production facilities provided by Fatheads Eyewear Studios. All rights reserved.